We have two heartbreaking stories for you today, and in our first story, OP's wife starts earning more money than him and becomes super critical of everything he does until he finally snaps. In our second story, OP discovers that his wife's leading a secret life, a life which involved her selling her body to guys she meets online. To find out how these stories end, get yourself a coffee and grab a bowl of popcorn so we can get into it.
My wife got a new job, and she started making several times what she was making before. I was incredibly happy for her since this was her first time making 6 figures. I've been making 6 figures for several years now, and have funded most of our lifestyle. She had a history of putting me down, but as soon as she started making more money, it amplified considerably. She criticized everything I did, and nothing I did was right in her eyes. For example, we'd go on several trips a year, at least one international and a few domestic, and I've always fully paid for them. Even though we travel more than most people, she said that she wasn't satisfied because I never flew her first class. We stayed in nice hotels, but she said they were never Instagram-worthy, and she'd often compare our life to social media influencers, and I'd have to remind her that what she sees on social media isn't real. We went on a vacation with her parents and sister, and on the last day, we visited a few sites before heading back to the airport. Everyone slept while I drove the family around, and when we flew back home, as soon as we deplaned, she started yelling at me on the concourse. She said so-and-so's husband is doing X for their wife, and demanded to know why I'm not doing the same for her. She kept yelling at me as we made our way through the terminal, but this memory is just a big blur now. As soon as we got landside, I suggested that I get the car from the garage while she got the luggage. I see her waiting by the door, so I pulled up as far as I could before getting to the handicap loading zone. She was yelling at me to move closer, saying that it didn't matter because it was late at night. Even though no one was around, it still didn't sit right with me to park in a handicap loading zone. But she was mad, and came up to the car, yanking on the door handles. She dropped something in the car and went back for the luggage, which was about 30 feet away. I was getting out to load the bags into the trunk, and she yelled something at me. That's when something inside me snapped. I told her that I wasn't going to put up with this anymore, and that she should call an Uber home as I drove off. As I was leaving the airport, I had a change of heart and decided to turn around and pick her up. I got back to the terminal, but she wasn't there anymore. I checked, Find My, and it looked like she was moving along with the AirTags in our luggage, so I assumed she must have got an Uber home. When I get home, I see a taxi outside. It turned out that she had dropped her purse and phone into the car when she went to go back for the luggage. She said it was a miracle from God that she found a taxi driver who was willing to drive her home without her wallet or phone, and that it was a sign for her to leave me. She moved out 2 weeks later and ultimately filed for divorce. I still think about that night, and I question myself, wondering if things would have been different if I kept my cool. I've lost my partner, but I'm in a state of peace that I haven't experienced in a long time. How do I stop reliving that moment? I've since taken several trips through that airport, and I relive that incident every time. When I tell people this story, they wonder why I put up with it for so long. It's because we built a life together. We had our home, our friends, our dog, and it felt like it was time to start a family. When things were bad, they were terrible, but on the good days, they were amazing. We're both South Asian, and divorce has a terrible stigma in our culture. My parents have been married for over 40 years, and I made a commitment to this person, a commitment I planned on sticking with. I'm not innocent, and I have a terrible time communicating when someone's yelling at me. I'd rather walk away from the situation than fight, especially if it's in public. This in turn upsets her because she feels like she's not being heard.
This sounded like a super toxic relationship, and not something that anyone should hang around for. Your partner should be the last person in the world to make you feel terrible about yourself. And if I'm being honest, OP's partner sounds quite abusive. It seems like since she no longer needed his help financially, his worth dropped in her eyes, so she was unable to respect him. Maybe she always felt that way, but didn't have a better option. Who knows? But let's check out the comments.
McKitten Man says, "Yikes is all I can say. Probably not the best move to leave her there, but I honestly don't blame you. I would have snapped ages ago if I was dealing with that on the regular. You were pushed to your limit and finally stood up for yourself. Although not the healthiest of approaches, the message behind it is still standing up to a bully because that's what she's been to you. If she sees zero flaws for her historic behavior and sees this as a sign for divorce, good riddance. You can't change people like that because they'll always be in the right in their own mind. Best to start preparing for the aftermath and talk to a lawyer. She-Devil in a Snuggie says, if it was a woman being belittled by her husband left and right, it wouldn't even be a question in anyone's mind if leaving was the best thing to do. She abused him. She's earning more than you, so I wouldn't have moved out of the house, and I'd be asking for alimony.
At least OP is free and can pursue something healthier with someone else. No one should stick around in a relationship in which they're being mistreated.
Like a lot of relationships that involved cheating, there were a lot of red flags, and eventually my suspicions got the best of me. I asked my wife to see her phone, and she freaked out. 20 minutes later, though, she gave it to me, thinking that she cleared everything. I went straight to her deleted messages and seen her texts with her boyfriend. There were messages like, "Oh, I love you so much. I can't wait to be with you for good, and I love you all the way." By the end of it, I was in full depression mode, but I didn't snap like I thought I would. I started thinking about the kids, the family, the house, all of it. Over the next few days, my wife was super cold and mean towards me. It was like I did something wrong. I said that we need to talk, giving her the chance to get it all out of her system. She told me everything. She told me that she'd been seeing this guy for a few months. A few weeks go by, and she makes plans to move out and get a lawyer. By the time all this happened, though, she wiped her phone, or at least she thought she did before giving me full access to it. When she gave me her phone for the second time, I could see that she was still texting him, but it doesn't end there. I decided to look at her saved passwords, and saw that she was on websites like Seeking and My Sugar Daddy. I asked her about the websites, and she said she didn't set up any accounts. After this conversation, I found a secret email, and it was filled with messages from guys who were trying to meet up with her. But even after that, she said nothing happened. They were just messaging. My wife didn't have the money to move out, but on her phone she had a saved screenshot of a $450 payment from a random guy on Cash App. I was shocked when I saw this. She even had the audacity to tell me that he was her mentor. I asked her, what the hell does that mean? After that, she broke down and admitted to meeting up and sleeping with 5 guys, and they paid her for the privilege. My mind was blown. Another week goes by, and more stuff gets uncovered. I found out that all this started when she came with me to a work event. At the event, she met a guy and hooked up with him the next day. Since that day, she's had over 40 affairs with 15 guys that spanned over the course of about 9 months. Most of the guys would pay her anything between $100 to $500, but 3 or 4 of them she slept with because they were hot. Sometime later, we're deep into therapy, and our psychiatrist asked to review her medication. It was then that we learned that her medical doctor had her on 2 of the most potent SSRIs on the market. He diagnosed her as being bipolar, and the medication she was taking had put her into a manic state. I did some research of my own, and I was amazed by what I found, and everything seemed to match up. Eventually, my wife was put on the right meds, and everything changed. While this is good for her, I'm stuck. Do I keep the family together and take care of my sick wife, living with the shame of it all? Or do I leave? This whole thing is just crazy.
This is a very unfortunate situation, and I don't know nearly enough about bipolar to make any real comments about how it can affect someone's behavior. That said, if it were me in this situation, I would lend my support, but staying in the relationship wouldn't be an option. OP also needs to consider his own feelings and mental health, as getting cheated on can be very traumatic. Rationally, he might be able to recognize that his wife's actions were being affected by her meds, but emotionally, he may never be able to get over it. While this is a tough situation, let's see if anyone has anything interesting to say in the comments.
Incarnate says, bipolar is different than simple depression. The meds played a huge part in this. It's far more complicated than you think. Mania is super self-destructive, and being on antidepressants can easily push someone with bipolar into mania. My wife had a psychotic episode from Effexor to the point of having hallucinations. To say that the meds might have played a minor part is grossly understating the impact that the wrong meds can have on someone with bipolar. Hypersexuality is a symptom of a manic episode, so this all tracks. With the right meds, the difference in the person is night and day. Bipolar is a horrible and destructive mental illness. Having said all that, I agree he should separate, but going no contact might not be the right path. They might be able to work things out, but it'll be one hell of an uphill battle. After Top says, as someone with bipolar 1, there's absolutely no excuse. None. Zero excuse for her actions, except she's cheated. Leave for your own mental health. The fallout to her was caused by her, not you. Bipolar isn't an excuse for her behavior. Do you think she'll take her meds every single day? No, probably not. Are you going to sit around and hope she does? Hopefully not.
This is a horrible situation, and whether or not OP can work through it remains to be seen. If anything, this reminds us that life isn't fair and can serve you a curveball when you least expect it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Coffee and Popcorn, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.